The story centers around Nick Powell, a high school senior poised to graduate with exceptional marks. A few years ago, his father passed away unexpectedly, leaving his mother, Diane, to take control of everything. She studied the finances and became very involved in managing Nick's life. Diane wants her son to pursue a safe traditional career, but Nick, who excels academically, is passionate about writing and literature. In fact, he plans to skip his graduation ceremony to attend a writer's workshop in London. Nick's life is a balancing act on the edge of convention and his desires. The scene shifts to the Powell household, where a grand celebration is underway. Diane delivers a speech celebrating Nick's academic success, raises a toast to him, and gives him a gift engraved with his name. However, Nick doesn't share the enthusiasm for the party and, feeling out of place, steps away from the crowd. He grabs a slice of cake, retreats to the garage, and for a moment contemplates using a shotgun on himself. But this dark moment is revealed to be just a dream as Nick wakes up startled the next morning. Downstairs, his mother has prepared breakfast, a pair of eggs and bacon arranged into a smiley face. While Diane reads the newspaper, Nick asks her about the writer's workshop in London. Diane dismissively responds, suggesting that Nick already knows her stance on it. She wants him to stay in America and focus on his career. After a tense start to the day, Nick hops on his bike and heads to school. At school, it's revealed that Nick does homework for other students in exchange for cash. In the halls, Nick's best friend, Peter Egan, is being bullied by a group of students, led by the tough Annie Newton. Annie is known for her petty crimes and recently sold Peter a stolen phone. When Peter can't pay her the remaining balance, Annie threatens him with violence. Later during lunch, Nick approaches Annie and offers to pay the remaining money for the phone. However, Annie dismisses his offer and tells him to stay out of her business. Nick, undeterred, confronts her, telling her she's emotionally broken, which infuriates her. She tries to attack him, but both of them are sent to the principal's office. In the principal's office, Nick makes a joke, but the headmaster is unimpressed and sends Annie home, advising Nick not to waste time on people with no future. Meanwhile, Annie returns to her chaotic home, where she lives with her stepmother, father, and younger brother, Victor. Her stepmother is neglectful, spending her time smoking and watching TV, which irritates Annie. After a confrontation, Annie feeds Victor before retreating to her room. That night, Peter visits Nick's house, and the two friends discuss a party being thrown by a classmate. Nick reveals he won't attend because he has other plans. He hands Peter a book that contains a hidden plane ticket to London, revealing that he's going to the writer's workshop. Peter is surprised and asks if Nick's mother knows. Nick admits that she doesn't, claiming that after his father's death, his mother has tightly controlled his life. Meanwhile, Annie is out with her delinquent boyfriend, Marcus Boehm. Annie and Marcus head downtown, where Marcus breaks into a luxurious car. Annie takes things a step further by smashing the window of a jewelry store and stealing a beautiful necklace. The two then steal the car and drive off, looking for trouble, likely planning to commit hit and runs just for the thrill of it. The next morning, as the cops close in on the scene, Annie gets ready for school after spending the night with Marcus. He asks her to leave the stolen jewelry behind, but Annie doesn't trust him, which infuriates Marcus. After she leaves, he informs the police about her crime. Later at school, Annie hides the necklace in her locker. Peter, who happens to be nearby, accidentally sees her and is about to leave when Annie notices him looking in her direction. Shortly after, the police arrive and arrest Annie for theft. They search her locker and find the stolen jewelry. Annie calls Marcus to inform him she's been arrested. He pretends he knows nothing while she accuses him of betraying her. At home, Nick's mother tells him that the airline had called to reschedule his flight, making it clear she now knows about his plans to go to London. Nick, panicked, tries to explain himself, but his mother is visibly disappointed. Later, at a house party, Peter is attacked by Annie and her gang. She believes Peter is the one who ratted her out and plans to get revenge. Terrified, Peter makes up a lie, claiming that Nick had called the police, thinking that Nick had already left for London. Meanwhile, Nick has a change of heart about going to London. At the party, he gives away his flight ticket and hotel documents to a random girl, then leaves the house for a walk. Soon, an old beat-up car starts following him. It's Annie and her gang. When Nick reaches a quiet part of the road, the group gets out and starts beating him up while Peter helplessly watches from the car. As Annie approaches, she mockingly asks Nick who the broken one is now. Nick fires back, telling her she is still the broken one. Furious, Annie kicks him hard, sending him rolling down the street where his head slams into a rock. Panicked, one of the gang members checks Nick and realizes he's barely breathing. Terrified, the group wonders if they just killed him. Annie suddenly snaps back to reality and orders them to pick up Nick's body. They reluctantly do so, carrying him into the woods. During this, Nick's watch falls but goes unnoticed. The group dumps his body in a storm drain and walks away. Annie, consumed by guilt, heads to Marcus's place and confesses to killing Nick. She begs him to help her create a believable cover story, but Marcus, scared of getting caught, tries to kick her out. Furious at his betrayal, Annie threatens to reveal the locations of all the cars he's stolen over the years. She then burns her clothes under a nearby bridge. In a shocking twist, the next morning, Nick emerges from the bushes completely unharmed. He heads to school, but when he tries to interact with his classmates, he realizes no one can see or hear him. He throws a book to create a commotion, but there's no response. Confused, he goes to the principal's office and hears his mother talking on the phone. He tries to speak to her, but his voice doesn't reach her, leaving him scared and bewildered. Nick, in a panic, tries to run back home, only to be struck by a car in the middle of the street. Moments later, a large cargo truck runs over him, but in an unexpected turn, he emerges from both incidents unharmed. He also notices that no one around him seems to notice the chaos happening to him. Disturbed, Nick makes his way home, only to find his mother speaking to the police on the phone. He tries to get her attention, but like everyone else, she can't see or hear him. It is revealed that his mother has reported him missing and the authorities are searching for him. This revelation forces Nick to face the grim possibility that he might be dead. Sometime later, detectives Kate and Brian begin investigating Nick's disappearance. They discover tire tracks in the woods and a broken side view mirror, leading them to believe something happened there. They are also informed about the altercation between Annie and Nick a few days earlier at school. The detectives visit Annie's home, where they find her sitting on the roof. Detective Brian, who once worked with Annie's father, asks if she's seen Nick recently. She denies it, claiming she hasn't seen him since their argument. Brian, understanding Annie's personal struggles with her father's remarriage, decides to let her off the hook, though he asks her to contact them if she learns anything new. While the search for Nick continues, Nick, now accepting that he might be dead, reflects on his situation in his room. He notices a beautiful bird perched on the porch railing, gravely injured and close to death. Suddenly, a live version of the same bird appears on his shoulder. Nick grabs it, but the moment the live bird vanishes, the injured one dies on the porch. This eerie event makes Nick realize the truth. He is not dead, but is experiencing an out-of-body experience. His spiritual form will disappear only when his physical body dies. Meanwhile, Detective Brian visits Marcus in his garage and questions him about the jewelry store robbery. Marcus denies any involvement and lies, claiming he was working. Though Brian isn't entirely convinced, he asks Marcus to contact the police if he comes into contact with Annie. Later, a nervous Marcus meets with Pete and warns him that the police are after him. The two get back to the woods where Nick was last seen and quietly move Nick's body from the storm drain to a new location. Marcus then decides to eliminate Annie, believing she's becoming a liability. He arranges to meet her near a train station under the pretense of wanting to talk. Unbeknownst to Annie, Pete is also called to the meeting place, unaware that the police are tailing him. When they all arrive at the station, Marcus quickly reveals his true intentions, pulling a gun on Annie. He tells Pete to remain silent and allows him to leave, but just as Marcus is about to act, several police officers arrive at the scene. Taking advantage of the distraction, Annie grabs the gun from Marcus and runs for safety. Nick, having arrived with the police, shouts that they will catch her, but in a shocking twist, Annie responds by shouting, "Never." It becomes clear that Annie can hear Nick to some extent, even though she cannot see him. The following day, she visits Nick's home after spending the night in the school gym. She sneaks into his room looking through his childhood photos and begins to realize how similar their lives have been. Both of them grew up in broken homes with emotionally distant parents. The weight of what she did to Nick, killing him in a moment of rage, starts to haunt her. Before she can reflect further, Nick's mother arrives unexpectedly, forcing Annie to flee. Annie runs to the woods where she last saw Nick's body, but to her shock, it's gone from the storm drain. She does, however, find a pack of nicotine gum nearby, which leads her to believe that Marcus had been there. Determined to find out the truth, Annie tracks down Marcus and forces him to the ledge at gunpoint. Eventually, he admits that he moved Nick's body to the base of a nearby dam, where it will soon be submerged. After hearing this, Annie tries to leave, but Marcus, hiding a gun, shoots her in the stomach. In a desperate retaliation, she shoots him in the shoulder. Though gravely injured, Annie manages to call Detective Brian and tells him where Nick's body is located. The police quickly respond, locating Nick's body just in time at the dam and rushing him to the hospital, where he's placed in the ICU. Though he's been saved from the freezing water, his life remains uncertain. Meanwhile, Annie, bleeding heavily from her wound, makes her way to the hospital. Racked with guilt, she heads to the ICU, where Nick is being treated and begs for his forgiveness. Lying beside him, she waits. Slowly, Nick's spirit returns to his body, but by then, Annie has lost too much blood and dies. Her final act was saving the very person she once despised. Weeks later, Nick visits Annie's younger brother, Victor, playing with him in an unspoken act of closure. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video.